they have to have some sort of strategy. Do you see any sort of understanding? What is your take on what's going on in Iraq, for example, which is so important right now? The funeral is going on, by the way. The funeral of those people who were killed, assassinated in these attacks, is going on in Iraq as we talk.
I mean, this is just a prime example of the dysfunction that exists when it comes to U.S. policy in the Persian Gulf region and in the Middle East altogether. It also shows the chaos and confusion that exists in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, about what their role is and what's expected of them. The Saudis are very concerned about being overtaken by Iran as a regional superpower. But the fact is, Iran is a regional superpower and Saudi Arabia is not. Saudi Arabia wouldn't be doing any of the things it's doing in Yemen or in Iraq if it weren't for American backing. Iran acts independently. And American backing is no guarantee of success, as we've seen. What we have here is, an example of Saudi Arabia trying to achieve strategic goals and objectives in Yemen by sustaining a blockade of Ansarallah, the Houthi, and encouraging violent action against Ansarallah by Saudi proxies in Yemen. When people speak of the axis of resistance, they need to understand that it's real. It's not imaginary. It's not fictitious. That means that there are organizations and nations that have commonality of purpose when it comes to security. And so when the Ansarallah or the Houthi are attacked and threatened by Saudi Arabia, there are allies who will respond in kind. And this is what's happened. I don't know if the PMF was involved in the strikes. I would doubt that they were because, as you said, they're part of the Iraqi army. But there are numerous militias that are outside of the framework of direct Iraqi government control who have the capacity to launch attacks against Saudi Arabia, and I believe did launch attacks against Saudi Arabian oil facilities. But what does Saudi Arabia expect? I mean, you don't get to exist in a vacuum. You don't get to go around and do something here and expect nothing to happen there. So they've basically uncorked a genie of violence, and they're not going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle. This ends badly for Saudi Arabia. This ends very badly for Saudi Arabia because all they did is kill. I think they killed, 8 Iraqi PMF members and 5 Iranian IRGC advisors. That's not a fatal blow. I mean, it's tragic for the families involved, but the notion that this somehow, blunted what was going on. First of all, they hit the wrong target. That's the other thing. The intelligence of the United States is not creative in this fashion. And we hit the wrong target. We didn't hit the targets responsible for the strikes. And the other thing is, all we did is alienate Iraq against us. So we didn't get the approval of the Iraqi government. A phone call was made to the Iraqi prime minister in which these issues were discussed. And then that was taken as concurrence. And then we struck. This just undermines an Iraqi prime minister whose hold on power is already tenuous. Recall that, he didn't win the last parliamentary election. He's appointed by the United States. There was a different outcome, but we wouldn't allow that outcome because we deemed to be more sympathetic to Iran than what we wanted. So we've already manipulated the domestic political affairs of Iraq. We've been doing so ever since we invaded and overthrew Saddam Hussein. And now we've done this. Who knows what this will trigger? I mean, this could very well trigger a military uprising against the prime minister and his ouster from power. I mean, because as you said, the PMF is part of the Iraqi military. And the National Security Council saying, we didn't approve this. The prime minister is saying, I didn't. But the point is, why did the United States feel comfortable making a phone call to the prime minister to begin with? Because they think he is their paid boy. And that reality is he is their paid boy. There would have been a response that the Iraqi prime minister could have given, a nationalized televised conference saying, I've received a phone call from the United States and I'm going to give my response in public. No, hell no. Don't even think about it. Instead, he hemmed and hawed, remained in silence, took everybody by surprise, and the United States carried out this attack. The man's a moral and intellectual coward. He's a political failure. And hopefully his days are numbered because he's not good for Iraq. Saudi Arabia, all they did is guarantee that their already exposed oil fields will be struck again. And another thing that people have to keep in mind is Iran's not out of the picture. There is no ceasefire. Let's stop pretending. If there was a ceasefire, then Iran wouldn't have launched missiles against Jordan. Iran will do what Iran needs to do. The IRGC has already said there is no ceasefire, and as needed, we will do what is required. And now that Saudi Arabia has attacked, a neighboring nation, Iraq, Iran may very well come to their assistance. If the non-aligned pro-Iranian militias now engage directly Saudi Arabia in open conflict, Iran could very well side with them. And then Saudi Arabia disappears as a modern nation state. The perfumed, fat, obese princes that currently occupy the senior positions of the Saudi leadership will, find themselves with no oil-based income. And maybe then the Bedouins will grow a pair of testicles and rise up and behead them. Something. But, the Saudi leadership is not good for Saudi Arabia. They care only about themselves. People need to, delve into the lifestyle of these people. Go to Bahrain, for instance, and it's tough right now because it's getting shelled. But back before it was shelled, just take a look at what's happening in Bahrain. What was the nightlife like? Who's driving the nightlife? It's all the pious Saudis and their royalty running there. The royalty flies to London. Go on that airplane. Watch how when they cross the Saudi national boundaries, they strip out of their clothes, start dressing in the most wild Western clothes. They land in London, and the debauchery that takes place in London is beyond belief. What the men do there is recorded by British intelligence, and what the women do is recorded by British intelligence, and they're all co-opted, and they go back, and now they have files that they can never talk about because what they do is unspeakable. And they go back and they put their clothes on, they pretend they're pious. When you get off the causeway connecting Bahrain to Saudi Arabia, you'll see mosque after mosque after mosque after mosque. Why? Because the sinful Saudis, as they come through, believe that by building a mosque or funding a mosque, they've somehow absolved themselves of the sin until the next time they go to Bahrain. This is who is governing Saudi Arabia today. They only care about their narcissistic well-being. They don't care about the Saudi people. They don't care about the region. And their narcissism can only be funded by the continued production of oil. And so this is all about how they keep the oil flowing, and they've bought into the false premise that the United States is a guarantor of continued Saudi oil production capacity. It's not. I'm not here to encourage global economic catastrophe, but right now Saudi Arabia could be literally wiped from the planet. All Nasrallah has to do is press forward its attacks and destroy the totality of Saudi Arabia's oil production infrastructure. All the Iranian militias have to do in the pro-Iranian militias in Iraq is press forward the attack and destroy the totality of Saudi Arabia's oil production capacity within range. And then Iran just comes and cleanups the mess. The eastern Saudi oil fields exist in an area where there's a prominent or dominant Shia population. Maybe it's time for the Shia to rise up, march on Riyadh, take care of the business. I mean, this Saudi regime has to go. It has to go. It's bad for Saudi Arabia. It's bad for the regime. And by participating in this blatant attack against Iraq, they set themselves up for failure.
Do you think, Scott, when it comes to the response from Iraq, I assume that Yemen would do something about it? Because if we assume that these drones came from Iraq, how do you see the combination of the two, drones from Iraq and missiles from Yemen? And what do we know about the air defense systems in Saudi Arabia?
What do we know about the air defense systems in Saudi Arabia? Yeah. I don't know. Aren't there a couple Saudi oil fields that are burning? Now we know about the Saudi air defense systems. They don't work. That's it. And so, as I said, Saudi Arabia is laid naked right now. When you go
that far, you have to understand the repercussions of what you're doing. It doesn't seem, I don't know what are they thinking of with these attacks.
When you look, the reality of the Gulf Arab region is starting to be exposed. We tend to believe that these are rational thinking human beings because they put on a facade of civility, a facade of civilization paid for by the oil that they produce, the oil that the West buys. And so they'll go out and they'll build a Louvre lookalike That happened in Abu Dhabi. Go to the Louvre. Don't have to go to Paris. Just come right here to Abu Dhabi, and you can have the same culture that you have in Paris. Go to Dubai, and you've got the great towers, and you got the party life, and you got all that. So it's just like the West. It's just like the West, except it's ruled by the most perverted, corrupted class of human beings in mankind. Gulf Arab princes. These aren't good people. These are simply people who are in the right place at the right time when the British Empire collapsed and Great Britain anointed them to be the neo-colonial masters of the Gulf responsive to England. I was in Abu Dhabi. I met the British advisor of the Crown Prince, and he is an MI6 operative. I just gave away one of the best secrets everybody knows about. Next to every Saudi prince, next to every Gulf Arab prince, next to every sheikh is a CIA or MI6 controller that controls everything they do and monitors everything they do. I was trying to have a conversation with him about Iran's nuclear program and how at that time Abu Dhabi was talking about a peaceful nuclear program. And I had an idea about how maybe they could do a uranium enrichment consortium to absorb the Iranian enrichment with Abu Dhabi and therefore legitimize enrichment, control enrichment. We wouldn't have the problem we have today. And he was interested until the British MI6 operative interceded. And so that's a conversation we're not having right now. It's not a sovereign state, is it? This is the reality. You're expecting rational behavior from Saudi Arabia. There is no rational behavior from Saudi Arabia. It is a corrupt regime. Everything about it is corrupt from the top to the bottom because there's just so much money pouring in there. And so they disguise their ineptitude. They disguise their corruption. They disguise their depravity by wrapping themselves in comfort, by wrapping themselves in riches. But once you peer through that, you lift it up and you look into it, it is ugly. It is grotesque. And what you're seeing right now is the foreign policy manifestation of this ugliness and grotesqueness. They don't know what they're doing. They are panicked right now, in an absolute state of panic. And in their panic, they're turning to the United States for their salvation. And that's going to be one of the fatal mistakes of the Saudi monarchy.
Yeah. You've mentioned the Iranian attack on Jordan last night, and at the same time, they were attacking some targets in Iraqi Kurdistan as well. And what do we know? This is the first time Iran is attacking Jordan without being attacked. This is something.
No, we need to correct that record, Nima, because that implies that somehow the United States didn't launch a surprise attack against Iran back on February 28th. All right. That implies that the United States didn't unilaterally violate the memorandum of understanding, the ceasefire, and initiate armed aggression against Iran. You see, there's no ceasefire. Iran's never agreed to a ceasefire. So it's continuity of action. Iran didn't attack the United States void of cause. The war continues from the Iranian perspective. They didn't say quit. They didn't start it, and it ain't over yet. So let's not pretend that somehow Iran launched a surprise attack. Iran didn't launch a surprise attack. Iran continues to defend its interests. And what it did is detect activity at a Jordanian airbase about airstrikes that were getting ready launched against PMF forces. And so they launched a preemptive strike, not a surprise attack, but a continuity of violence that was initiated solely by the United States. That's what happened. It's not a surprise attack. It's not perfidy. It's not Iran playing games. Iran is at war against the United States. And you have to keep that in mind when you talk about what Iran's potential future options will be, because there is no ceasefire. Iran can hit anything it's already hit anytime it wants to hit with full knowledge that it's doing the right thing.
Yeah. What is the reason that Donald Trump has decided to put out some sort of pause with Iran? And are they preparing for a new round of war? Or what is that?
I don't know. How do you prepare for a new round of war when you have nothing? Why did they stop the last time? Ran out of oil, ran out of ammunition. They got enough oil and they thought they had enough ammunition, so they started it over again. Now they run out of ammunition, they're running out of oil. So they stop. That's it. Probably means that they're probably going to build up to try and do a third round. Because you can't trust the United States. It's agreement incapable. The United States lies about everything. They lied about the MOU. They lied straight up about the MOU. The MOU was always a facade to buy time. So what is the reasoning? The Russians have declared I don't know if it's an official statement from the Kremlin, but it's coming out from that the foreign ministry in coordination with other Russian agencies has determined that Donald Trump is emotionally unstable. Now, we know that. Anybody who monitors his social media postings know that this is not a well man. I declared him to be suffering from extreme narcissistic personality disorder of an antisocial variant. He is malignant in this regard. But he's not a rational actor. He's unpredictable. He can wake up in the morning and anything can happen. Anything can happen. Like, for instance, if you're Saudi Arabia and you've engaged in a 6 to 8 month long negotiation about the potential of American assistance in uranium enrichment, and you have an agreed upon framework ready to be signed, only to have Donald Trump wake up next morning, go to the bathroom and have gas problems or something and decide, no, we will not agree to this unless Saudi Arabia concurs with the Abrams Accords, something Saudi Arabia said they'll never do until the issue in Palestine has been resolved. How can you deal with a man like this? Wake up in the morning thinking you have an agreement to find out you don't have an agreement. Waking up in the morning thinking you have an understanding based upon weeks of negotiations, only to find out that the president had a brain whatever and decided that, it wasn't the case. The United States is governed by a man who sets policy through social media postings. Straight up. No coordination. I'd hate to be the Secretary of State. I'd hate to be the Secretary of Defense. I'd hate to be anybody in his cabinet because you have no idea what's going to happen in the morning. You think you have a policy that's being implemented and the president decides that he's going to put something else out there without coordinating. This is what we're dealing with. This man is unstable, emotionally unstable. That's a polite way of saying that he is batshit crazy.
How about Donald Trump deciding, maybe together with Benjamin Netanyahu, the only way that they can convince Saudi Arabia to accept Abraham Accords would be the new attacks, a devastating attack on the part of the Axis of Resistance on their soil, maybe destroying oil facilities and putting a lot of pressure on them. That would convince the government in Saudi Arabia, the people, the king, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia to accept the Abraham Accords. What
are the Abrams Accords? Is it a defense arrangement? Does the Abrams Accord increase the security of Saudi Arabia? The answer is no. It's an economic and political arrangement. It's a recognition of Israel, and then you're going to do business with Israel. You know what would happen to the king if he came out and said, that's what we're doing? He wouldn't be king. He wouldn't be king. The crown prince wouldn't be the crown prince. It's politically impossible for Saudi Arabia at this point in time to embrace the Abrams Accords under these conditions. So no, I don't see that. I mean, what's going on between Netanyahu and Trump? I mean, they're both in political trouble, but that's okay because they're masters. And remember, neither one of them are in charge. There's a larger cabal out there, the Grand Zionist Project, that's been promoting Greater Israel. And Netanyahu's not the driver there. Netanyahu's about ready to lose an election. He's over. He's finished. And when he loses that election, there's a good chance he's going to go to jail for the rest of his life. Maybe his political allies will save him. But, Donald Trump, he's doomed in the midterms unless he totally rips up the Constitution and does something crazy, in which case, hopefully, law-abiding members of the United States government will do the right thing. Because when a president breaks with the Constitution, he's no longer the president of a constitutional republic. But that's okay because the Grand Masters don't care. The Greater Israeli Project understands that they have floundered in the Middle East. They're not winning in Lebanon. They're not winning in Syria. They're not winning against Iran. So what are they doing? They're making common cause with the United States. The parasite is taking over the host. And this is through the National Defense Authorization Act that's currently underway, being considered, that sort of melds American intelligence, Israeli intelligence, American military. It makes it one. Israel is taking over the United States. That's what's going on here. Is that the United States is becoming the strategic depth through the Great Israeli Project. And everything else is a sideshow. So, again, the Saudis need to wake up to the fact that this corruption that's taking place between because it is a corruption of democracy that's taking place between Israel and the United States, doesn't view Saudi Arabia as an asset. So the Abrams Accord is a false promise. the false promise of prosperity and peace. There will be no prosperity and peace because the greater Israeli project isn't about making Saudi Arabia prosperous or peaceful. It's about Israeli dominance of the region, and everybody else is a tool to be used, discarded, tossed away. That's it. And until Saudi Arabia recognizes it, they're on a highway to hell. And right now, they have maybe gone a bridge too far. I'm using all these analogies here, but people should understand what I'm saying. Because if the PMF, if the pro-Iranian militias decide to go for broke, there's nothing that can save Saudi Arabia. And also remember this, a little story from the past. In the build-up to the Desert Storm, there was talk, there was a period of time during Desert Shield when, the Marines were hanging out on their own up there, basically speed bumps. If the Iraqis told the Republican Guard to head south, there ain't nothing going to stop them. The Marines would have gotten out there, fired off their basic load, and then been speed bumps, run over by Iraqi tanks. Fortunately, the Iraqis didn't do that, and we were able to reinforce. But during that window of vulnerability, we kept telling the Saudis, hey, why don't you take some of your military off the southern front with the Yemenis and bring them up here? And the Saudis went, hell no. Why? Well, first of all, half of the southern part of Saudi Arabia is stolen from Yemen. Do the history research. They stole it from Yemen. They stole it from the Houthi. And Houthi won it back. And so there's a good chance that if all this goes down, Saudi Arabia is going to be dismembered. Straight up dismembered. Because it's a fake country. Everybody knows that. It's a fake country. It's just carved out of the desert, because some Wahhabi head choppers went in and chopped off the right heads and the British decided to support them. There it is. And when you get rid of the Wahhabist, head choppers, you've got nothing. And a galleon of Bedouin tribes that hate each other. And it will break up. The Yemen will take its part. Who knows what Iraq will do? Who knows what, Jordan's a fake country, so it doesn't matter. But the point is, that whole region is fake. That whole region was created when specific leaders subordinated themselves to the political will of their British and American masters. And now that their British and American masters are floundering and a new master has arisen, not a master, but a new dominant power, Iran, they don't know what to do. They're in an absolute state of panic. Iran is the future. Again, who am I talking to? You're an Iranian, you know this. 5,000 years of culture and history. And if these Bedouin head choppers that currently populate the leadership positions in Riyadh think that they are the equivalent of that, they have another thing coming. And so Iran is the power. Iran is the future. And, these Gulf Arab states, I think, understand that what that means for them, because they're not long for this world if they continue to side with the United States against Iran.
Scott, looking at the war in the West Asia, before this war started, there was no issue with the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, Iran is not backing down. It's controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The whole war, the conflict is on the Strait of Hormuz right now as we talk. Yemen is coming in. They're talking about Reuters report that Yemen wants a new mechanism with the bubble mandate. They want a toll system in the bubble mandate. That's going to be the new policy. You see how the war is changing itself, reshaping itself in the West Asia. It's complicated. It's not about Iranian nuclear program anymore. Just nobody's talking about Iranian nuclear program. That's amazing what's going on. And it's all about the Strait of Hormuz right now, bubble mandate, and the pressure they're putting on Saudi Arabia, which is so important for the oil market, as we know. The other point is, how is the United States prepared to bring everything into West Asia? Because that is what's going on right now. If they want to focus on the West Asia, they have to bring everything in just to fight all these little wars, big wars. And how is that going to help the United States?
You see, bring everything in. I mean, that's like me going to Las Vegas and saying, watch out, I'm going to bring everything in on this table. I'm going to bring it all in on this next bet. Then I reach in my wallet and pull out $3 because that's all I got. Bring everything in? What does the United States have? There was a time when we could deploy 700,000 troops at a snap of a finger. We did that, Operation Desert Storm. There's another time when we could deploy 200,000 troops at a snap of the finger. We did that, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Actually, it was Iraqi Liberation, but then we realized that spelled oil and nobody wanted to go to war for oil, so we changed it to freedom. Today, Nothing. This isn't Bewitched. You don't get to rub your nose and magically forces appear. The reason why we could deploy 700,000 troops in 1990, 1991 is that we had spent the last 2 decades preparing for a major war in Europe, where through Reforge, or return of forces to Germany, we were ready to deploy 300,000 troops within 10 days. So we had troops on standby, trained, equipped, ready. We also had a large standing army, 250,000 in Germany with the equipment ready to go to war. So when the time came to divert them, we were able to pull forces out of Germany that were combat ready. We had the lift capacity to do so, and we brought them in, and then we could bring in other forces, marry them up with equipment, because we paid the money and we trained to do this. We were prepared to do this. By 2003, we didn't have that capacity anymore. We had a more limited, reduced capacity, but we're still able to generate 200,000 troops through reduced lift capacity. We're still operating in a benign environment. We landed in a Kuwait port where there's no enemy forces attacking us. We built up forces with no enemy capability to oppose us, landing on airfields without any intervention. Now we have zero capacity to deploy. It takes 5 months for a U.S. Army Heavy Brigade in Fort Carson, Colorado, to prepare for a peacetime deployment to Poland. 5 months to get their act together, to go through the training, to do the manpower things, to get people in, because it's a peacetime military. People are pregnant, people are on leave, people are in school, your units are reduced down. You got to build them back up. You got to get them trained. You got to go to a national training center, because we don't have units that are permanently combat ready anymore. We don't. In order to get them ready, we have to send them to the NTC, National Training Center, and beef them up. And then we take them out and we deploy them to Poland for their little 6 or 9 month rotation. 5 months to do that. And that's just one brigade. Imagine if we were trying to send, I don't know, what did the Pentagon tell Trump it would take back in 2020 when they shot down the drone, and Trump said he's going to bomb Iran, and then the Pentagon said don't do it because we have to take the Strait of Hormuz, and it's going to take us about 800,000 to 1.2 million men to do that. We knew what it was back then, and we said we don't have it. It would take us easily 9 months to a year and a half to build up these forces by mobilizing reserves, by training them, and then how do we get them there? General Berger, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, recognized that we couldn't. He said, we're married to a legacy system of amphibious shipping where all the assets go into one ship. And as we approach, the area denial and the anti-shipping missiles capability of Iran sinks everything. There's a reason why our aircraft carriers are operating far away from Iranian shores, because if we get close, we get overwhelmed. And you try and bring in amphibious shipping to Chabahar to offload and project power inland to seize the Strait of Hormuz, which was the 1985 war plan that I was involved in, and it hasn't changed. How do you do that? You can't do it. So when you say the United States is going to bring everything in, we've got nothing to bring. We are literally an empty suit. The emperor is naked, a paper tiger, whatever analogy you want to do. There's not a damn thing we can do, Nima, nothing. So we should stop pretending that there's something more the United States can do. We brought our air power to bear, and we paid the price. The infrastructure necessary to sustain long-term air combat has been devastated by Iranian counterstrikes. We've run out of long-range precision strike weapons. We're running out of of missile interceptor capability. There's no defense industrial magic out there. This isn't a computer game where you hit a cheat code and click the button and suddenly you build up capabilities. This is reality, and our defense industry is not capable of responding in a timely fashion. So we've blown the bolt. We got nothing left to replace it. And what, we're going to pretend here that Donald Trump's going to be building up resources for a third try? No. It's over. We lost. Game, set, match. And it's time for the United States to recognize this. And it's time for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arab nations to also recognize this. If you continue to align with the United States, only bad things are going to happen to you.
Scott, what do you make of Zelensky and Zelensky's attack on Iranian cargo vessel, which was supposed to, from Russia to Iran, which was attacked later on? We had the communication, the talk between Iranian foreign minister and Ukrainians, because Ukrainians called Iranians to talk, to put the differences aside. But in my opinion, Zelensky is trying to do something. I don't know what is his main objective with these attacks. First
of all, the attack was an accident. Okay, it was unfortunate consequence of Zelensky's 25 June declaration of a 40-day drone-based war of influence against Russia, expanding the scope and scale of Ukrainian attacks to bring pain to Russia. And so a decision was made to expand the attacks into the Caspian Sea. And so Ukrainian drones start flying over the Caspian Sea, and they see a ship, and they strike the ship. They didn't know it was an Iranian ship. They just hit it because that's the business they're in. Just, random acts of violence is all the Ukrainian drone campaign is. So they hit the ship. When it turned out it was an Iranian ship, Zelensky, who was back at home having declared this 40-day war, but losing the war, losing everything, no air defense, no nothing, desperate, says, I can turn this into an advantage. So he now claims responsibility. The Iranians have supplied the Russians with drones, he said. What do you think we're going to do? It's a common cause. We want to make common cause with America. And so that's what he did. He hyped it up on his way to the United States. And he got to the White House, and he tried to make that common cause. And the United States said, sit down, shut up. We're not playing that game. We're not expanding our conflict with Iran into Russia for your behalf. And Zelensky crawled away. And right after that, what happened? The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry issues a statement. It was an accident. We didn't mean to hit the ship. We apologize. We're paying reparations, because the reality is nobody's going to back up Ukraine if they want to go to war against Iran. According to the reports, Iran was preparing the long-range ballistic missile strike package operating out of Tabriz that was going to hit Ukraine quite hard. And Ukraine was going, who's going to come to our assistance? The answer is nobody's coming to your assistance. This is the tragic truth of the situation with Ukraine. The NATO summit in Ankara was a charade, a fake, a fraud. Nothing came out of it. Nothing. Promises for what? Licensed production of the Patriot? There will not be a single Patriot ever produced under license in Ukraine. Ukraine will cease to exist long before that. Promise of support from Europe. Europe has no capacity to support. If there's anybody who has a bigger empty suit militarily than the United States, it's Europe in totality. NATO, zero, zilch, nada. So he's alone. This was an accident. There's nothing coming from this. It was an accident that Zelensky, part and parcel of his overall processes where they put hype and information over warfare over reality, turned out to have nothing. Nobody was supporting him. And they did the only thing they can do: admit it was a mistake, apologize, pay reparations, and hope it goes away.
When you see Russia is implementing a new blockade on Odessa, which is so crushing for their economy, import and export in Ukraine. On the other hand, you see Wall Street Journal coming out and saying Ukraine is the winner, and that's why Donald Trump is changing his mind. And yesterday he posted his photo with Zelensky saying that this is a good guy. This is, what is happening in the mind? What sort of information is he receiving, in your opinion, from the MI6, CIA, or whoever is providing him with these intelligence? It feels that
Trump or Zelensky?
I'm talking about Donald Trump, because it seems that you see some sort of change in his attitude towards Zelensky.
Do you think that Donald Trump gets intelligence from his intelligence service? That implies a rational actor who is a prisoner of the establishment, the way it's supposed to operate. Wait for your morning briefing, consider it with your cabinet, and then come up with a solution. Donald Trump wakes up in the morning, passes gas in the toilet, and puts out a social media post. That's how policy is made in America today. Donald Trump is more influenced by Laura Loomer receiving $2 million from a Ukrainian oligarch to fly to Kiev to do a prepackaged propaganda thing to influence Donald Trump. He's influenced by that. This isn't an MI6 plot or a CIA plot. This is, again, the emotional irrationality of a deranged American president. What does he think? I don't know if he even thinks. He responds, he acts, but there's no thought process here. What we do know is that there is a major information warfare effort underway, promoted by the CIA and MI6, that where Laura Loomer and everybody, Gilbert Doctorow factors into this. And the job is to create the condition inside Russia so that the public doubts the capacity of the Russian leadership to prevail in this conflict. This is what the 40-day expanded drone war was all about, to take the war to the Russian people, to bring pain to the Russian people, and then get the Russian people to question the leadership of Vladimir Putin. What for? September 20th. That's the target date. That's the State Duma elections. The goal is to sweep united Russia from power and pull down the foundation of political support for Vladimir Putin and cause him to be overthrown by an enraged public who believes him to be a weak leader. That's what this is all about. That's everything that's going on. It's a giant gamble to achieve that result. Well, first of all, the people who came up with that plan know nothing about Russia, know nothing about Russian election. I mean, how do you undermine a president that is operating at, 76% support rate today? A Western politician would kill for this. And by the time the election comes around, trust me, that number is going to go above 80. Because, what did Putin do yesterday? He met with the State Duma, the target of this entire propaganda exercise. He put a medal on a Russian hero's chest. And that Russian hero leaned into him and said, Mr. President, you have to be bolder. Be bolder. So the president goes up in front of the Duma and says, I just put a medal on this guy's chest, and he told me he wants me to be bolder. What do you say? Did you see that video? Yes, they said. Not yes, maybe. Yes, vehemently. Yes, be bolder. And the president starts smiling and laughing and twirling. You want me to be bolder? Yes, we want you to be bolder. He just owned them. It's over. The campaign is over. Now what's happening? You talked about the closure of the Black Sea. You know how stupid Zelensky and his Western supporters are? See, Russia is a nation that believes in the rule of law. I know people are out there saying they don't, but they do. And you know they do. I know they do. One of the things Russia had agreed to was keeping a corridor open, a Black Sea corridor, so shipping could come out of Odessa and other Black Sea ports with grain, and that could come down through the Bosphorus and get to market. And Russia honored this commitment, regardless of all the things that Ukraine did to provoke Russia. Ukraine attacking Novosibirsk and attacking Russian shipping, claiming they own the Black Sea. They've driven Russia from the Black Sea, they said. Now they've gone a bridge. They start attacking the Sea of Azov, and then they start attacking Wildberry, online retailing warehouses. So Russia shut down the Black Sea. Who owns the Black Sea today? Russia. Only Russia. Ukraine will never again gain access to the Black Sea. It's been denied to them forever. First of all, by the de facto blockade put in by Russia, and the fact that Vladimir Putin has now openly articulated that Odessa is a Russian city, and he's talked about the partitioning of Ukraine to include transferring parts that belong to Romania pre-war back to Romania. That implies that Russia will have a land bridge between its current positions and Transnistria, which means that the Black Sea coast will belong to Russia. This is the future of Ukraine, and it's going to happen because Ukraine is being collapsed from within. We saw the thing that everybody was hoping would happen in Russia, fire Gilbert Doctorow, fire the general staff, fire your defense minister. Why? They're winning. Why would you fire them when they're winning? Oh, because you're an agent of influence. You're a disruptor force of British intelligence. Okay, I get it, Gilbert. But fire them. Why? But nobody talks about the fact that Fedorov had to be fired. And Syrskyi was fired. The very thing you wanted to happen in Russia happened in Ukraine. Thousands of people in the street demanding action. That's the instability. And it's only going to get worse because now Russia, because of the Wildberry attacks, is taking out the totality of the civil support infrastructure of Ukraine. Gas stations are disappearing. Not just gas distribution centers, gas stations are disappearing. All the supermarkets are disappearing. All the warehouses are disappearing. There's going to be nothing left by the time Russia finishes that campaign. And when you roll into winter, if Ukraine lasts that long, they'll have no gas, no energy, no heat, no food, no supplies, no nothing. They will all die. It's the death of a nation. And this is the direction we're heading. And no magic is going to come from the Russian Duma elections on September 20th. Those elections will come and go. Putin will be in power stronger than ever. And Zelensky will be holding an empty bag. And nothing Donald Trump says, nothing Europe says will fill that bag up. And that bag is all the Ukrainian people have coming into the winter. And what this is going to lead to is absolute societal collapse. And that means the end of Ukraine.
Do you feel with this new resolution that was passed, it basically Lindsey Graham prepared this resolution about sanctioning Russia?
It has to be good then. If Lindsey Graham did it, it has to be good because the man's a genius.
But it means that the United States, Washington is preparing itself for the continuous war with Russia and Iran. I think that's the message.
Doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean that at all. You say it means that, but to prepare for a long-term war, you actually have to do preparation. They're getting ready to get involved in an energy war with the world because this package requires them to impose sanctions on anybody that buys Russian energy at a time when there is no energy in the world. How stupid can you be? Donald Trump engineered the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, engineered the closure of the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. 25% of global energy supplies is denied to the world. And now Donald Trump's going to tell the world, you can't buy Russian oil. You can't buy Iranian oil. Do you know how stupid they are? What are they going to do? Rely upon the massive U.S. energy stockpile? We don't have any energy. We've sold it down. We got nothing. It's empty. 15 days, I think, is what we got. It's over. This is the dumbest thing in the world. It is a nation committing suicide because politicians don't have the courage to confront reality. This will not succeed. It may pass, but it will fail. And the moment it starts to fail, Trump will exercise the opt-out clause and say, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to impose this because he's going to lose India. He's going to lose China. He's going to lose everybody. He's already lost them, but it's going to become confirmed. And the reality is he can't open up the Strait of Hormuz. He can't open up the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. So it's game, set, match. Please, Congress, please, 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 please pass this. Pass it. Because it will hasten the defeat of this irresponsible hegemon called the United States. And it will expose the absolute insanity of the United States Congress to the American people. And maybe in the midterm elections, we will wipe the slate clean. That's all we can hope for.
Do you think that Donald Trump would hand it over to the next president of the United States? Or he's going to have some sort of end to one of these two fronts, or maybe two of them? There are two fronts right now with Russia and with Iran. My question is,
it doesn't matter what Donald Trump wants. That's what I'm trying to say. It only matters what Russia wants and what Iran wants. So let's stop talking about Donald Trump. He has no cards to play. This isn't an American game anymore. All right? So the question is, what does Russia want? And the question, what does Iran want? And you have to answer those questions. What America wants is irrelevant because America is not a rational actor. So what an irrational actor wants shouldn't matter, should it? Plus, America doesn't have any cards to play anymore. We don't. Do you really think this sanction bill is going to do anything? It's just going to hasten the destruction of the United States. Oh my God, in order to do something like this, you have to be in control of the world. You have to control everything to make this happen. We control nothing. We control absolutely nothing. All Iran has to do is squeeze harder on Bab el-Mandeb and Hormuz, and the United States collapses. Europe collapses. The whole charade collapses. To make sanctions work, the rules-based international order has to be up and running and fully functional. But it's been exposed by Mark Carney at Davos as a fraud. Everybody knows it's a fraud. There's nothing here. You can't enforce a rule unless you got a sheriff to enforce the rule, and the sheriff is fat, orange-faced, and unstable, and has no guns and has no ammunition for the guns. I mean, it's. We have to stop pretending the United States has relevance in the world today. We don't. We don't. We're just a declining power. And if we continue to do this stupidity, what we're going to see is the declining is going to become a collapse. And as an American, I don't want this to happen. I mean, everything I have here could be lost. My daughter just had a baby. The world they're going to live in could be, chaos. Nobody wants this. But in order to prevent it, we have to start being realistic. We have to stop pretending that Donald Trump matters in the world. He doesn't matter. He's made himself irrelevant. And he's exposed his weaknesses. The Russians and the Iranians know the weaknesses of the United States. Fortunately, both nations understand that chaos is not a solution. Russia has long said that predictability is what they need most when it comes to foreign policy. So the way you prevent unpredictability is to keep the United States from collapsing. So you may see Russia managing problems to keep America from collapsing. You may see Iran doing things to keep America from collapsing, but none of them are going to do things to make America ascendant again. It's over for the empire. So stop asking what Donald Trump is going to do, what America is going to do. There's nothing they can do. The sanctions package is empty. There's just nothing going to happen here. Because if we threaten to sanction India, they've already told us to pound sand. We threatened to sanction China, they told us to pound sand. Sanction Iran, war. Sanction Russia, what? None of it matters. All it's going to do is hasten the collapse of the petrodollar, hasten the collapse of American control on global financial systems. It used to be said it was too hard to replace SWIFT. It's too hard, too inconvenient. SWIFT's become unlivable because of the United States. Replace it, it has to be replaced. It's no longer inconvenient. It's a necessity to replace it. Replace the petrodollar, you have to, because the United States has not shown itself to be a rational actor on global financial scenes. We literally are writing a script that leads to the total collapse and demise of everything we hoped we could be.
Lavrov today said that there is no United States in BRICS. There is no Brussels in BRICS. So everybody's the same in the same. We are equals. We're talking to each other. We are putting our differences aside, and we are communicating. This is the system that they're making, a system that works for all with all their differences. And do you think, Scott, with the war of attrition that is happening between Russia and the United States, between Iran and the United States, are they going to continue with this war of attrition? Or if the United States decides to escalate, are they going to escalate? Are they going to continue with the same? Because Russia has proven something so important during the war in Ukraine. They don't get excited with the war. They're continuing with this with a strategy, with a consistent strategy. Are we expecting the same on the part of Iranians? Well, how do you understand that?
Well, I mean, both Russia and Iran are rational actors, but they both need to achieve outcomes that are best for their respective nations. Russia has defined the ideal outcome in terms of solving the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine. That's the goals, that's the objective. Russia has not expanded this into, while the United States and NATO are down, we're going to resolve Baltic security, we're going to resolve Arctic security, we're going to deal with NATO, we're going to deal with the United States. No, they say that comes later, but first we have to solve the Ukrainian problem. We have to get rid of this Ukrainian cancer. And so that sort of limits what Russia at this point in time is willing to do. That's why Russia is not seeking to expand the conflict into Europe, even though they have every justification to do so. Iran, on the other hand, they recognize, I mean, again, it's similar. They want to address the root cause of the problem, but the root cause is the United States. They need the United States out of the Middle East. And so the RIGC has said as much. And so I don't see Iran seeking to limit this conflict. I see Iran seeking to exploit all of the advantages it currently possesses to drive America out of the Middle East. And this is a sad state of affairs because that means that we will be defeated. And remember, war is an extension of politics by other means, and politics is designed by economic realities. So this becomes an economic war. And so I believe that Iran will not only continue to fire missiles when it needs to, but it will continue to squeeze hard in the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb, because there's only a finite amount of pain the United States can take before it's compelled to either totally fail or make the changes necessary to make the pain end. Thomas Schelling wrote game theory back in the 1960s. He talked about the power to project pain. Iran almost exclusively possesses that power today when it comes to the Middle East, and that brings about not just deterrence value, but it also brings about the ability to shape events in your favor, because they can bring the pain and other sides can't match the pain, and so there's an imbalance of pain making, and the game is going to be won by Iran. It's going to be a different game than the one Russia's played. Russia's game is actually inherently containable. But because the United States has made this an existential issue for Iran, Iran will have different outcomes. And the outcome is the United States must be evicted meaningfully from the Middle East. There can be no more American military power hovering off the shores of Iran. There can be no more Gulf Arab states serving as a forward base for American military power projection into Iran. The United States must be totally removed from the Middle East region. The Gulf Arab states must be totally compliant to the needs, wants, and desires of Iran. Fortunately for them, what Iran wants is peace and prosperity. They just want the area to be stable. They want to be able to sell their oil. They want to be able to market their goods. They want to be able to live in peace. That can never happen if the United States is in the Middle East.